The sky over Kres 7 burned crimson as plasma fire rained from orbit. Sergeant Alara Voss pressed herself against the scorched remains of what had once been a colonial outpost, her armor's environmental system screaming warnings she'd long learned to ignore. The ice beneath her boots was melting into slush, mixing with ash and blood, both human and alien. She shouldn't have been here. The evacuation order had come 3 hours ago, and her squad had already lifted off. But Alara had heard something beneath the thunder of orbital bombardment, a sound that transcended species, a cry that needed no translation, the wailing of young ones left behind. Through the smoke and steam, she'd found them huddled in a blast crater. 3 creatures no larger than human toddlers, their scaled bodies trembling, their 6 eyes wide with terror. They were Krethian juveniles, apex predators in their adult form, but now merely frightened children watching their world burn. Alara had seen their kind before. The Krethians, proud, territorial, and fierce, had been humanity's reluctant allies in this sector's war against the Vex Collective. She'd fought alongside their warriors, respected their strength, even feared their wrath. But these cubs knew nothing of war. They knew only that they were alone. "Command, this is Voss," she transmitted, knowing the channel was likely dead. "I've got civilian survivors, 3 juveniles, requesting extraction coordinates." Only static answered. The ground shook as another missile struck nearby. The cubs shrieked and Alara made her decision. She couldn't carry all 3, not with her injuries and the hostile environment, but she could try. She tore strips from her tactical vest, fashioning a makeshift harness. The cubs resisted at first, snapping with needle-sharp teeth, but exhaustion and fear eventually won out. 2 she secured to her chest. The 3rd she cradled in her arms. Together they weighed nearly as much as she did. The journey that followed would haunt her dreams for years to come. Through fields of ice that cracked beneath her weight, threatening to plunge them all into frozen oblivion. Through corridors of flame where the very air seemed to burn her lungs despite her helmet's filters. Her armor took hits from falling debris, from stray weapons fire, from the planet itself seeming to reject her passage. The cubs whimpered against her, their claws digging through her armor into her flesh. She didn't stop, couldn't stop. Humanity had a saying, "No one left behind." The words had never specified species. Alpha Threxar had lost everything in a span of heartbeats. His mate, fierce, beautiful Sena, had died holding the line while their cubs evacuated, or so he'd believed. The Vex assault had been overwhelming, forcing a retreat that tasted like betrayal in his mouth. Every instinct screamed at him to turn back, to die fighting beside her. But duty demanded he lead the survivors to safety. Now, as he stood in the staging area of the human evacuation ship, that duty felt like chains. Alpha, the human commander, approached, her expression grave. "We've lost contact with the surface. The Vex are glassing the entire sector. I'm sorry." Threxar's claws gouged marks into the metal deck. His cubs, his tiny, defenseless cubs had been in the secondary shelter, the one that hadn't made it to the transports. The one now buried under nuclear fire. "How long?" he growled, his translator barely managing the depths of his anguish. 12 minutes until we jump. We can't." "Contact, surface contact," a technician shouted. Single human signature moving fast, approaching the rendezvous point. On the tactical display, a blue dot flickered through the hellscape below. Threxar's trained eye tracked its impossible path, through kill zones, through terrain that should have been impassable, through conditions that would challenge even a Krethian warrior in full battle armor. "That's Voss," the commander breathed. "But her squad already, why is she still down there?" The answer came moments later as the cargo bay doors groaned open, admitting a wall of superheated air and a figure that seemed more shadow than soldier. Sergeant Alara Voss stumbled through, her armor blackened and cracked, her movements heavy with exhaustion. And in her arms, against her chest, crying but alive, were Threxar's cubs. Time seemed to stop. The Alpha's world narrowed to that single impossible sight. A human, fragile, short-lived, weak by Crethian standards, carrying his children through an apocalypse. Alara took 3 more steps before her legs gave out. She fell to her knees, but even then her arms remained locked around the cubs, protective to the last. Medical teams rushed forward, but Threxar was faster. He dropped beside her, his massive form dwarfing the human soldier. Up close, he could see the extent of her injuries: burns, lacerations, one arm hanging at a wrong angle. Her armor had taken damage that should have been fatal. She'd pushed far beyond the limits of human endurance. Why? The word escaped him in his native tongue, untranslated, primal. Alara's eyes, visible through her cracked visor, met his. She didn't understand his language, but she understood the question. Her response came in a voice barely above a whisper, each word bought with precious breath. Because they're kids, because someone had to, because, she coughed, blood speckling the inside of her helmet. Because that's what we do. Threxar carefully took his cubs from her, cradling them against his chest. They immediately burrowed into his mane, mewling with recognition. Safe, alive, impossible. As the medical team pulled Alara away on a stretcher, Threxar stood frozen, understanding flooding through him like a revelation. He had spent decades studying humans, fighting alongside them, respecting their tactical ingenuity and stubborn resilience. But he had never truly understood them until this moment. Humans didn't save his cubs because of alliance or strategy or debt. They saved them because, in the human heart, there existed a concept that transcended evolution and logic, a willingness to die for those who could not save themselves, regardless of species, origin, or blood. The Crethians called themselves apex predators, the ultimate survivors, shaped by a harsh world into perfect warriors. But perhaps survival meant something different to humans. Perhaps their strength came not from tooth and claw, but from something far more dangerous: the absolute refusal to abandon hope, even when all logic demanded otherwise. The ship shuddered as it broke orbit, leaving Krez 7 to burn. In the medical bay, human doctors worked frantically to save Sergeant Alara Voss. In the observation deck, Alpha Threxar held his cubs close, watching the planet fall away. His mate was gone. His world was ash. But his children lived, carried through fire and ice by hands not built for war, but for something greater. In the war councils to come, when leaders debated the value of the human alliance, Threxar would speak. He would tell them that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or tactics. It was the fact that when every rational being would run, when survival itself demanded retreat, humans would look at the helpless and the lost and say with absolute conviction, no one left behind. Not even the children of their alien allies. Not even when the very planet was dying. Not even when it meant walking through fire and ice with death at their heels. That, Threxar realized, was what made humanity truly terrifying. Not their weapons, but their hearts, stubborn, illogical, and utterly unbreakable. And perhaps, he thought, watching his cubs sleep peacefully for the first time since the attack began, that was the kind of ally worth dying beside.